Imagine pouring hours of sweat into a brand new project.
Yeah.
You get terrible results and you walk away just completely frustrated.
Oh, yeah. We have all been there.
Right. But then imagine watching that exact same project miraculously succeed a year later when you literally did nothing.
That is the best feeling.
It really is. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a remarkably short but honestly profound piece of writing published today, August 16th, 2026.
Yeah, it is a fascinating one.
It is a journal entry by an author named Ang, and it clocks in at under 200 words. It is titled Notes on Gardening, Part 988, Second Chances for the Humble Zinnia.
Such a specific title, too.
Yeah, very specific. And on the surface, our source material is a literal description of a garden pot. But our mission today is to look beneath the soil of that text and unpack the rich metaphors hidden inside.
Exactly, because this deep dive is for you, even if you have never touched a trowel or, never planted a seed, or even if you struggle to keep a basic houseplant alive.
Which I definitely do.
Right. Well, we are exploring a story about the frustration of low yields, the strange beauty of serendipity, and how we manage our own personal passions when things just do not go according to plan.
We are examining the architecture of effort.
Yes. Anyone who has ever tried a new hobby, launched a startup, or thrown themselves into a creative project only to be met with a baffling lack of progress, they're going to recognize the exact emotional landscape Ang is documenting here.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with initial friction. We begin with Ang looking back at a previously disappointing history with the Zinnia plant.
Right, setting the baseline.
Yeah. And the text does not describe a catastrophic failure, where the plant simply dies in the dirt. Instead, Ang describes experiencing mixed success.
Mixed success.
Which, in my experience, mixed success is often more agonizing than a total failure.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if an idea completely crashes and burns, you have closure,
Yeah.
you can easily walk away.
You know it's dead.
Right? But Ang notes that the Zinnia technically worked. It sprouted, it bloomed. Yet the physical reality of the result was deeply unsatisfying. Ang writes that the foliage form is rather messy and elongated.
Yeah, that phrase, messy and elongated, it perfectly captures the drain of a poorly optimized process.
It really does.
But the frustration is compounded by a second factor Ang introduces. The text notes that the germination rate is rather low.
Ah, yes.
So the input-to-output ratio is completely skewed. You're preparing the soil, planting the seeds, and carefully watering them, but only a tiny fraction of those seeds actually take root.
The ones that do are a mess.
Exactly. The few that do manage to survive end up producing this chaotic, unkempt foliage. The return on investment simply does not justify the energy expenditure.
Think about a major initiative at work, or perhaps a complicated creative endeavor you have taken on. You pour your weekends and evenings into it, and technically you get a result. The project blooms, but the workflow is incredibly inefficient, the process is elongated, and the actual success rate of your ideas taking root, your professional germination rate, is agonizingly low.
That is such a good way to put it.
You are burning massive amounts of cognitive fuel for a very meager, messy reward. Because of this high-effort, low-reward scenario, Ang makes a deliberate decision. The text says, hence, I postpone my exploration of this flowering plant species.
Postponed.
Yeah. Now, I have to push back on this a little bit. Let's look at the reality of how we operate in a demanding environment. If I have a messy, low-yield project, and I tell my team, or even just myself, that I am simply postponing it, that sounds suspiciously like an excuse.
You think it's a cop-out?
Kind of. Society constantly rewards grit. We are conditioned to push through the dip, to iterate until we conquer the problem. At what point does a so-called seasonal break just become a graveyard of unfinished projects? How do we know Ang isn't just putting a positive spin on quitting?
Well, what's fascinating here is the psychological distinction between quitting and postponing, which really comes down to resource allocation versus ego protection.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Quitting is often a permanent, reactive measure. When we quit a difficult project, we are usually trying to protect our ego from further frustration. We declare that the endeavor itself lacks value, and we just wash our hands of it entirely.
Right, we say, this is stupid, I'm done.
Exactly. Postponing, as Ang uses it, demonstrates a higher level of situational awareness. It is an acknowledgement that the current environment, or perhaps the current level of skill and available patience, is a poor match for the demands of the task.
But the friction remains.
Right.
Walking away still feels like a failure of perseverance.
I get that. But perseverance without assessment is just stubbornness.
Oh, wow.
Forcing a low germination project to work drains our finite cognitive resources. Ang recognizes the poor return on investment and consciously reallocates that energy elsewhere. The text doesn't say the zinnia is worthless. It says the timing is wrong.
It is a strategic pause.
Yes, a strategic pause. The emotional maturity lies in stepping back from a frustrating endeavor rather than trying to bend reality to your will. It prevents the kind of deep burnout that would ensure you never look at a zinnia again.
That makes total sense. And that strategic pause sets the stage for the turning point of this journal entry.
It does.
Ang hits pause and walks away. What happens in the interim? For Ang, the answer wasn't a sudden burst of renewed motivation or a stubborn vow to try again. It was a total accident.
A complete surprise.
Right. Ang looks at an existing empty area of a garden pot and discovers that dormant seeds have managed to sprout entirely on their own. The text makes it clear this happened without any direct intentional cultivation during this current season.
The environment took over while the gardener stepped away.
Yeah, and these dormant seeds didn't just sprout. They grew into a fully mature plant, producing what Ang describes as a lovely yellowing bloom.
It is a moment of profound serendipity.
It really is. Ang is standing there admiring a beautiful flower that they technically did not plant, at least not recently. And the deductive process Ang goes through to trace the origin of this surprise bloom is where the metaphor really deepens.
Right, trying to figure out where it came from.
Yeah. Ang isn't entirely sure where the seed came from. It could have been from a previously bought plant nursery or just leftover seeds. But the specific yellow color provides the clue. Based on that color, Ang deduces that the seed most likely came from their recycled potting mix.
The recycled mix.
Yes. So let me ask you this. Does this mean that sometimes our greatest successes happen when we literally do nothing and let the recycled mix of our past efforts do the work?
I mean, yes.
Because the potting mix isn't a fresh, sterile bag of soil from the store. It's the recycled dirt from past seasons. It contains the remnants of old projects, previous mixed successes, and the composted matter of all that messy foliage we discussed earlier.
And this illustrates a deeply comforting reality about how human effort accumulates. We tend to view our mixed successes, like the hobbies we abandoned, the technical skills we struggled to learn, the drafts we postponed. We view them as wasted time.
Yeah, we sweep them into the mental trash bin.
Exactly. But Ang's garden demonstrates that effort does not evaporate. It becomes part of your internal recycled potting mix.
Oh, I love that.
The knowledge, the micro skills, and even the familiarity with failure, they all go dormant. They form a nutrient-rich foundation.
So let's look at the mechanics of that dormancy. When we step away from a highly frustrating problem, we usually assume the work has completely stopped.
The conscious, anxious work has stopped, but the subconscious processing has not. In cognitive psychology, there is an incubation phase in problem solving.
An incubation phase.
Yeah. When you are staring directly at a problem with a low germination rate, your frustration creates immense cognitive friction. You develop tunnel vision.
Right. You get too close to it.
By stepping away and leaving the pot alone, you remove the friction of your own meddling. The ideas sit in the background. They integrate with other experiences, the recycled mix of your broader life. Ang's lack of interference was the exact environmental condition the seed needed to finally break open.
That delay between the effort and the reward is the mechanism we so often fail to respect.
We really do.
We assume that if column A gets the work today, column B must show the result tomorrow.
Right. The immediate payoff.
We spend months trying to learn a coding language or write a business plan. We hit a wall of messy foliage, and we walk away feeling totally defeated. Then, 2 years later, we are tasked with a completely different project, and suddenly we have a breakthrough idea in the shower.
Yep.
The solution seems to appear out of thin air, but it didn't come from nowhere. It grew out of the recycled soil of that supposedly failed project from 2 years ago.
That delayed return on investment requires an environment free from constant optimization. The zinnia needed time, the unseen accumulation of nutrients, and an absence of expectation to finally produce that lovely yellow bloom.
So Ang gets this unexpected victory. The dormant seed produces the yellow bloom, and this surprise forces a reevaluation. Ang delivers a final verdict on how to interact with this plant moving forward, asking a direct question in the journal. Would I revisit Zinnia again?
And the answer is yes.
The answer is definitely, but it comes with a structural change. Ang writes, definitely, it is a seasonal thing. The text then offers a piece of advice. Always revisit plant species from time to time. Better yet, make them seasonal plants to grow.
A very deliberate shift.
Yeah, and Eng provides two reasons for this. First, it adds variety to the collection. Second, it serves to rekindle your passion for certain species. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for anyone trying to manage the overwhelming demands of their own interests and careers.
Okay.
When Eng advises making the Zinnia seasonal, it maps perfectly onto how we mismanage our own lives. We often treat our passions and our work responsibilities like permanent obligations.
Yes, we do.
We discover a new gym routine and force ourselves to go 6 days a week, every week, until our joints ache and we dread the sight of weights. Or, we find a new video game and play it obsessively every single night until the joy is completely replaced by boredom.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the demand for perpetual blooming is fundamentally at odds with how human attention operates. We expect ourselves to be in a constant state of summer.
Wow, a constant state of summer.
Right, but human energy, creativity, and focus are biologically and psychologically cyclical. We are organisms subject to natural rhythms, not algorithms running a continuous loop of code. By intentionally treating our demanding work responsibilities, our intense hobbies, or difficult creative projects as seasonal, we align our behavior with our natural capacity.
We really have to unpack the cognitive weight of demanding that perpetual summer. If you view a hobby or a project as a continuous daily habit that you must maintain forever, any break feels like a moral failure.
Exactly.
But how do we actually audit our lives to know what should be seasonal and what should be daily?
It requires categorizing our endeavors based on their inherent friction. Things that require low cognitive load and provide steady maintenance, like brushing your teeth or taking a daily walk, those belong in the daily category.
Sure.
But endeavors that demand high creative output, deep learning, or heavy emotional investment naturally produce messy foliage over time. They have a higher friction rate. Categorizing these high-friction tasks as seasonal grants you permission to disengage without guilt. It builds a hibernation period into the architecture of your life.
The guilt removal is the key. When I take a 3-month break from playing the guitar, I don't have to carry the weight of quitting an instrument I used to love. The guitar is simply out of season.
The mechanism of distance creates the space for renewed appreciation. Eng recognized that attempting to cultivate zinnias continuously would inevitably lead back to the frustration of low germination rates. The plant's flaws would become the surf focus.
Right, you just get annoyed by it.
By accepting the zinnia as a seasonal guest, the messy foliage becomes a temporary, manageable trait rather than a permanent annoyance. The lovely yellow blooms become something to eagerly anticipate rather than a metric to impatiently demand. Regulating our exposure ensures that when we finally do return to a project, our energy is authentic and our passion is genuinely rekindled.
It replaces the suffocating pressure of linear progression with the sustainable patience of cyclical growth.
Beautifully said.
So, to bring this all together, we have journeyed far beneath the surface of a tiny 150-word journal entry. We examined the crushing reality of mixed success, where a project technically works but yields messy foliage and a frustratingly low germination rate.
Yeah.
We debated the critical difference between defensively quitting and strategically postponing, acknowledging that sometimes our current environment is simply not a match for the effort required.
And we unpacked the mechanics of the recycled potting mix, exploring how the composted remnants of our past, supposedly failed efforts, provide the hidden, nutrient-rich foundation for unexpected victories.
That was huge.
We saw how stepping away allows our subconscious to process without the friction of our own anxious meddling.
Finally, we mapped out the philosophy of the seasonal shift. By auditing our lives and giving ourselves permission to make high-friction passion seasonal, we protect our variety of interests and prevent the burnout of demanding perpetual blooming. So, what does this all mean?
Well, there is one tiny, easily overlooked detail from the very top of the source text that ties this entire philosophy together. It is the title of the entry itself.
Oh.
Eng titled this post, Notes on Gardening, Part 988. Think about the sheer volume of observation, the staggering discipline required to reach entry number 988.
That is a lot of entries.
Eng is an individual who meticulously tracks the cycles of their own life. The messy foliage is documented, the low germination rates are recorded, the unexpected yellow blooms are analyzed. This leaves you with a critical question to ponder regarding your own cyclical growth. If you do not keep a record of your own mixed successes and frustrations, your own personal catalog of messy foliage, how will you ever recognize the dormant seeds when they finally bloom?
That's a great point.
We often rely on our immediate feelings to judge our progress, but memory is notoriously short-sighted. A patient, honest record of what you have tried, what you have strategically postponed, and what is currently composting in your recycled mix is the only way to track your true trajectory. What specific area of your life could benefit from a long-term patient record so you know exactly what to bring back next season?
The mental spreadsheet might dictate what is supposed to happen today, but the long-term journal reveals what is actually growing over time. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unexpected wisdom found in a recycled garden pot. We hope you discovered some dormant seeds within your own past efforts today. Till the next post, yours truly.